So my name is Valerie Brown. I want to thank you for joining us tonight with United Policyholders. Give me just a second, I'll get this slideshow going. So today's topic is navigating your contents claim. This is the 5th workshop in our Roadmap to Recovery series for the 2021 California wildfires. And I'll show you in a little bit where you can find those other webinars. If you miss them, we record them always. And then just a really quick feature on the bottom of your screen. For the Zoom controls, there's one that's got a Q&A. And if you go there, you can put a question in to get answered. If we're going to answer it later in the presentation, we won't answer it, but if it's something we can help you with during, I've got Elise Hicks, our staff attorney, is on with me today, and she'll be directing you to any resources we can to help you with your questions. So a little bit about United Policyholders. We're a nonprofit that's been doing this work in disaster recovery for 30 years. We're funded by donations and grants. We don't take money from insurance companies. And we work as a consumer advocacy group for people with insurance issues in all 50 states. So we have 3 programs. This program is our Roadmap to Recovery. It's where we provide guidance on insurance, getting back home after catastrophic loss, working through the recovery process. Our work from the Roadmap to Recovery program feeds into our Roadmap to Preparedness program, where we help people learn to be better prepared from the experiences that people such as yourselves have had. And then our Advocacy and Action program is where we take those pain points that we identify in those areas, and we work with legislators and regulators to help improve the situation for people moving forward. And so just to fine print, this workshop is intended to be general guidance only, not legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. I'm here as an educator. And while Elise is an attorney, she is here as an educator just like myself. If you haven't received this book, we highly recommend it. It's our Roadmap to our Disaster Recovery Handbook. The little yellow book's what we call it. If you would like a copy of it, if you will email info@uphelp.org, and we'll mail a copy to you. It's a great bite-sized piece to work through your insurance claims process. We also have our website, and this is your disaster page, your disaster recovery library for your disaster here. It's got a lot of information, so please take that in bite-sized pieces as well. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just a little bit about me. I'm our Senior Program Officer for the Roadmap to Recovery program. I've been doing disasters since my community burned in 2007. And you can see from my credentials, obviously I spent a lot of energy on working on disaster and recovery issues. The goal of today's presentation, we want to help you collect the full amount your insurer owes you for every personal property item that was damaged or destroyed up to your policy limits in as painless and a less time-consuming manner as possible. So there's 3 strategies that we're going to talk about: documenting and listing and valuing the items, ways to find available receipts, photographs, other evidence, and then how to make the case to get an extension of time if you need to. Just a little bit about insurance before we get going. So insurance is that vehicle to get you back where you were before your loss. It doesn't drive itself. So you have to be proactive to restore your assets and collect those funds. And as we like to say, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. We're here, help as available. Guiding principles. One of the biggest things is give your adjuster a chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover. Making sure that you are focused on negotiating and leveraging. And then, the words we find are most helpful in the claims process is polite assertiveness. And then if you need professional help, please don't hesitate to get it. We are a self-help resource. Our job is to help you help yourself as much as you can. Sometimes you're going to get stuck and you really do need professional help, and don't hesitate to get it when you need it. We start with this adage: recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. There are a lot of detours on the way, so be aware of it, take care of yourself. Focusing on that insurance claim, it's a business transaction. While their advertising might say that they're a good neighbor or a friend, they're not friendly. It's a business transaction, a legal contract that you have, and there's a tension between you and them that just naturally exists because you want to be paid the full amount and they want to minimize what they're going to pay out on that claim to protect their bottom line. Also be aware that adjusters vary in personality and their experience. A lot of them are oftentimes out of state. And so making sure that they are aware of the regulations that impact you for your claim in California is key. If you find someone is not responsive, please go up to their supervisor and request to have someone else who works better with you and meshes better with you. One of our key points is that knowledge equals power, and the more you understand about your insurance claim, your rights, the benefits that you're entitled to, and the value of those losses, the more benefits you're going to recover and the smoother your claims can go. So time is on your side. From our survey, statistics show the longer your claim stays open, the more money they pay. Remember to ask for advances and extensions when you need it, and just recognizing that to accurately and fully document and value your losses, it takes time. It takes a lot more time than most people think. So, pace yourself as well, and break it into bite-sized pieces. Don't go into this thinking I'm going to come up with an inventory for my whole house in a weekend. It might be that you do, your kitchen cabinet. It might be that you do your linen closet. But be aware how long these things take, and they do take a lot more time than you think. As I mentioned earlier, giving your insurance company a chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover. And remembering that polite assertiveness. Speaking up, we always recommend that you do speak up, you present your request clearly and in writing, explain what you need, when you need it, why you're entitled to it. Always document what you're doing. Keep that claims journal. Note who you talked to, the number you called, the date, the time, what was said. Make a copy of your policy and then write it up. Put Post-it notes in it. And when they tell you something's in your policy, ask them to show you where it is in your policy so you can make that note of what was where. Anytime that they're communicating with you and they're communicating by phone, document it, write it, put it in an email back to them and send it back saying, this is my understanding of the phone call we had today, what you said I need to do, next steps. Please, correct anything, any errors that I've made and let me know and just confirm this. They might not confirm it, but you're at least creating a paper trail where if you have to go to the Department of Insurance or get professional help, you have a paper trail that shows the steps that you've done and the actions and your understanding of what was happening. And so obviously I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So a paper trail is essential. We find that adjusters rotate out continually for people. So having that continuity in your claim is key, and that documentation is going to help you get there. It allows you to track problems and progress. It's paperwork that proves that you are cooperating. It allows you to track those items that might slip through the cracks. So you want to make sure that you've got all of that documented. And it gives you that opportunity to say, I haven't had a response back in 45 days, and California law says this. And so you owe me a response. And so it gives you that way to prove what you were doing. And so best practices, just so that you're aware, this PowerPoint will be provided, be available on our website, and it will be sent out as a PDF. So you don't need to take a lot of notes on this. We will provide this for you, and the recording will be available also. Now for your fire, effective January 21, the California Insurance Code had an update that basically gave you a couple of rules that provide you some better protection in insurance claim. One of the first is that insurers can't require a specific form for your contents inventory. So if they have a form that they give you that they're saying you have to use, you can use whatever you would like. It might be that their form is easier for you, then feel free to use it. But if you've got something that works, like we have on our website, we have a spreadsheet that you can download that has items and things to work from. Please don't hesitate to use something like that. You can also group categories of items. So think like books, clothing, kitchen items, you know, instead of calling out by title these types of things or by item, you can cluster them into categories and just do a rough approximation. Time limit to collect your full replacement cost is 36 months, no less than 36 months from the date that the first payment is made. So what will happen with your insurance is for your contents claims is if they did an advance, that would be the first payment made. And if they did the advance, you know, that would start that clock there. If they did not do an advance, it'll be from the time they first cut you a check from when you've submitted your inventory. So whichever one of those things starts it moving, it's from that date of that first payment. And this is regardless of what the policy says. Again, a lot of times you're going to have adjusters who are out of state. And so they're going to be relying on the policy language. It doesn't matter what the policy says with that. They have to follow California law. So, you know, just being aware of your rights is key. We've done that workshop where previously about your legal rights. I believe it was workshop number 2. And please don't hesitate to go back and look at those webinars when you have any questions or look at those PowerPoint decks. Combining coverages. This one's a little vague. So there's replacement cost, which is what the RC is. And so what this is doing is giving you the right to use your other structures, which would be barns and other buildings, garages, whatever, things that weren't attached to the home, or your contents to replace your dwelling, the primary dwelling. And so this is actually just spelling out in the California Insurance Code that now you have that right without restriction, whereas some insurers would allow it previously and some would not. So again, it's just something good to know about your rights with regards to your contents. So I'm going to take a deep breath for a second, give you a chance to catch your breath. I know that's a lot to throw at you. And Robert, I see that I read your mind, so that's good to know. Again, if you've got any questions, you know, that are specific, if you put them in the Q&A, the chat is just for just general things. Let's get us back in here. So our first item is knowing your policy and your insurance company, right? So as I mentioned earlier, you want to get a copy, the full and complete copy of your policy. Make a copy so you can mark it up. You're going to be looking for very specific things. I'll show you examples of those later. You're looking for what they call a rider or a schedule that might have increased coverage. You could also have limits that will limit the amount of coverage you can have. So say for jewelry, if you had your jewelry scheduled, obviously you would have a larger value. If you have a limit of $10,000 for jewelry and you had $20,000 in jewelry, if you didn't have a rider or a schedule to cover that, you would be limited to what the policy says, which would be the $10,000. You want to always be organized, save all your receipts, scan them, and then keep track of everything in that journal, in a notebook, some way to keep it together. And for a lot of people, when I say scan, you know, your iPhone, if you've got an iPhone, they've got a really good feature in Notes where you can make a note and then you can just actually make a scan. It'll take a picture, turn it into a PDF, and you have everything you need. There's lots of apps that'll do that. You can also just take a photo of everything just to have it. One of the biggest things is knowing what success other people are having with your insurance company. So please, we highly encourage you to network with other people who have the same insurance company and see if they're having any success in any of the areas that you're struggling with. So talking a little bit about contents, which is coverage C on every policy, I believe, except State Farm's, which is, for State Farm, it's called coverage B. And then what it does is it covers your personal property owned by you. And so if you imagine taking the roof off and shaking the house, what falls out is personal property. It can also include items outside, items in the garage, you know, patio furniture, things like that. You want to check your policy for any off-premises coverage or limits. If you had a guest, it may cover the guest property it's destroyed at your home. But just be aware many items are subject to very specific coverage limits. So you want to know what your policy says. We're going to look at a couple of examples here. So here's an example of what that might look like. A guest, somebody who's in residence, and what types of things that they're there. And here's an example of knowing your policy limits. So going back to this, the circle here, the red, is the personal property. And your extended, here's something to look for. It spells out here on your policy that it covers replacement costs. Some policies do have actual cash value. We're going to talk about those definitions a little bit later, but want to call that out when I see that. Here's a different example, and obviously, each insurer is going to have a different, this is what we call a declarations page. And so they're going to look very different depending on who your insurance company is, but basically they follow along with these lines. They list each of your coverages. And as I said before, if it was a State Farm policy, this would be coverage B, but most other insurers, it's personal property or contents is coverage C. And then here's just a blow up of, here's an example of the State Farm, and you can see it's personal property there, and then there's a dollar amount for this. Going back to what we talked about earlier, talking about special sub-limits. And so here's an example of things that would be limited. This would be spelled out in your policy. And so you can see on this policy example, cash on site at the home would be limited to $250. Business property is limited to $3,000. Motor vehicles are limited. Electronics, trading cards, figurines, this type of stuff is limited to a dollar amount. One of the things to pay attention to on that example, the highlight here of G and H, firearms in this policy are limited if they are stolen. So if there was no theft, if you lost $10,000 in firearms during your disaster, you would be eligible for all of those firearms. If they were stolen, though, you would be limited to $2,500. So just being aware of what those are, and that language matters. So theft of only applies for that. If it's listed, if it just had said jewelry, watches, precious stones limited to $1,500, that would be the limit on your policy. And these are some items that are usually not covered. So things that have their own coverage that would be scheduled or have a rider. So think jewelry, art. If they're specifically insured elsewhere, they would be excluded. Typically your animals, your birds, your fish. If you have a subtenant or a roommate, their items, they're not considered a guest, they're a tenant. And so their materials, possessions would not be covered. Most motor vehicles are not covered. Recreational vehicles are not covered by your homeowner's policy. So now that we've talked about what's covered in your contents and how to figure that out, we're going to talk about options for completing your personal property claim. So you've got three options really. So you can prepare a very detailed personal list and inventory that describes and values everything you've lost, submit it to your insurance company, and then as you replace items, send them the receipts. You can ask for a waiver or a payout, or you can hire professional help. Professional help is expensive, so most people generally don't go that route, at least initially. Waivers are not necessarily easily given, so you need to have very strong extenuating circumstances to ask for that, for it to be approved. It's always worth the ask. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. So always ask, but understand that they might not give that to you. Other things to note in this: depreciation is negotiable. We're going to talk about this later. Just bear in mind that there's no official standard for how much insurers can depreciate. You can please ask them how they calculate it. There's certain items that shouldn't be depreciated. And on our website, we do have an example of a depreciation schedule you can look at. Your insurance company probably has their own. They may or may not share it with you, but it's worth making the ask to see if you can get it so you can figure out the rhyme or reason to what they're doing. Fair depreciation. Sorry, let me get back here. Give me a second here. I felt like it had advanced the slide, but I'm still chugging along, so we're good. Fair depreciation. Most policies allow the insurance company to depreciate your property to reflect the condition it was in at the time of the loss. California law has with the new regulations that came into effect, now they must consider both the age and condition of the property. Usually insurers like to just look at the age, but the condition matters. Just it should be weighed equally. So think, for example, if you had a couch that was in a room rarely used, it might be in like new condition, even though it's 10 years old, versus the couch that your dog and your children wallow over that looks every bit of 5 years old or more. And so this is just information you need to know about that piece. Going back to the waiver, people ask, we do surveys every disaster we work on, and so that's one of the questions we ask is, did your insurer require you to submit that detailed inventorized home inventory? And you can look at our statistics. 25, just over 25% offered less than full benefits in exchange for not requiring itemization. Nearly 25% paid 100% of policy limits without requiring the inventory. I will say for that number, most of those people were significantly underinsured. So it was, they weren't fighting over large amounts of money to get there. 28% were allowing, requiring the very strict detailed inventory. And now like almost 22% were allowing that bulking that now is part of state law. Let's go to the next slide. Documenting and valuing. So if they insist on that detailed inventory, one of the first things is just gathering any available documentation you have, right? So receipts, photos, available records to build that list. There's some tools we have on our site that can help you. As I mentioned before, we have a spreadsheet on our website. There are sample files. We've got some previous disaster survivors who are volunteers who have put their information together and shared it as an example. It's dated, so you need to be aware the pricing is probably not accurate, but it gives you a sense of what would go into it. And then from the process, you build your inventory, you turn it into your insurance company, and then they're gonna give it back to you. It may or may not be in the same format, and they're gonna revalue and depreciate those items that you have. You do have to be very careful with that because you do want to trust and verify what they're providing you, and making sure that it is what you have. Because a lot of times they're farming that out to a third party. That third party is doing these all the time, and there's sometimes mistakes can be made. So you do want to make sure that what you get back from them reflects what you submitted and what you had. And so here's from our website the different information we have. So there's the example of our spreadsheet, the tips, some of the strategies that we talk about. These time savers are great. You don't even have to go into a store now anymore. You can shop online and build your shopping cart, PDF it, and provide that as well. You can have friends and family do the same, and help you build what you had. So we're going to starting with that list, right? So it really depends on you and how you want to do this. Some people like to do it room by room. Some people do it by topic. They're like, I want to go through and do, all my electronics because that's how they think, whatever the category, whatever works for you to plug in that inventory. The yellow book I mentioned has an example of a very, very, about a third of the book is an inventory. We have our spreadsheet online that you can use. just be, put it together in whatever way makes sense for you. And like I said earlier, leverage your family and friends. They might have photos that can jog your memory, or they might be willing to document on your spreadsheet what they see. They might be willing to list a room for you. You can, as I mentioned earlier, go to the stores so that you can create a list and value what those items were. Use the internet to do it. One of the biggest tips we've heard from the survivors we've worked with over the years is that these are massive tasks. And so you want to celebrate every success, no matter how small. I worked with a woman with the Thomas Fire in 2017, and she had a twofold strategy for doing her inventory, because she had just recently retired before they lost their home, and she said it was the most money anybody was paying me. And so every week I turned in my page, the page that I'd worked on, to my insurance adjuster, and I kind of viewed it. It wasn't my stuff. I was making money, and so it was a job to be done, and I was doing piecework. And so that allowed her to kind of divorce herself from the emotional aspect of listing what she was doing. But she was also very clear that it was emotionally exhausting to do that work. She had other pieces going on. Inventory was just one small piece out of getting her recovery, getting her home rebuilt, getting her life back in order. And so for her, a page a week was reasonable. 20 items was more than she could manage sometimes. And so, figuring that out and celebrating whatever it is you got done. And so I'm going to grab Robert's question in the Q&A right now. So if you inherit items from various family members or friends, do you do the normal itemization? Yes, if you've inherited them, you're just going to list that if these are your possessions, however you got them. If they are antiques, you're going to call them out in your listing as being antiques. If they're not, and you have no way of valuing them, so you've got the piano that's been passed down to the family 50 years, your valuation of that would be replacing it with a like equivalent item. And we'll talk about that kind of pricing and valuation in a little bit, okay? So step 2, adding to your list. So, keeping a note on your smartphone. I started doing this when my community burned with the Bleach Creek Fire in 2007. And my friends who were working on this, they just had to keep a notepad by the bed, because they'd wake up at 3 in the morning and scrabble things down. And then for us who had been in their houses, we would be doing the same thing. You're like, oh, I remember you had this, this, and this, and you're just adding to the list. So thinking about that. One of the easiest ways to jumpstart your list, checking with your bank or credit card companies for those previous records you've got. Costco, Home Depot, Amazon, Bed Bath & Beyond, Macy's, a lot of these stores, Target, a lot of them will have your shopping history because you're either using their credit card or a reward coupon that you get that's linked to you as a customer. So ask them for that, because that will provide you a lot of information. And if you have small specialty stores that you went to, like the supply store or a yarn store or something, ask them, because you'll be surprised how much information they kept track of for you. Because if you're a valued customer, they want to make sure they have things that make you happy and want to shop when you come in. And then adding to your list, this other trick, I did a workshop for about 50 people where we did this. We spent a weekend working on this. So we did a visualization exercise. So you're picking the room, you're walking around in, so you want to walk, like you're in your kitchen, you're visualizing it, you're walking around in your mind, you're like, I'm opening this drawer, this is where the towels are, this is where this is, oh wait, I had all this stuff in this. And so it helps you place items that you don't, you're not going to remember just by trying to list. And you can do this again with your friends. So if you're going to do this and you need your eyes closed, you can speak out loud, record it, have somebody taking notes. But again, these are tricks that people have shared with us over the years that have worked very well for them. Quantities is really hard. So estimating quantities for you know, without having the items to go count feels impossible. So one of the tricks that a lot of people use for books, CDs, anything that stacks on a shelf or will be in a stack, is just estimate the size of the package it was in. So if you had a 6-foot bookcase with 5 shelves and each shelf was, you know, 1 foot wide, go to a store, ask a friend just to measure how many books are in a foot of shelving. And then you take that and you're saying, okay, I had 6 feet of shelving. That's, you know, 20 books per shelf. Okay, so I've got 120 books there. That was a mix of paperbacks and hardbacks. You know, find an average price per type, and then, you know, and then that way you've got a valuation and you've got, you know, that estimation. The same for your clothes. You know, the biggest thing is making sure that as you're laying it out, whatever that measurement is you're going to make, figure it out the way you would have hung those items or you would have stacked those items. So some people are very, loosely arranged their towels or their clothes. Other people have everything crammed so tight you can't pull anything out without pulling 3 things out. So however you manage to have your space arranged before, make sure that you're replicating that so you get a very good idea of what that rough estimate was. And the other part is just, you know, the same with drawers, cabinets, storage containers, you know, anything that you, especially if you've got a photo of what it looked like, it can help you figure out what would be in there. You'll be amazed how much could be crammed in your junk drawer, your cooking utensil drawer. There's so much space in those drawers that you until you go, and if your friends and family are good, open their drawers and figure out what that looks like. Do a rough count. Have them do a rough count. But give yourself a way to estimate that, and so that you have that a real good sense of what those quantities are, because those add up tremendously. The difference between 12 towels and 24 is huge when you're looking at pricing, and you want to capture every penny that you're entitled to for the items you have. Now, going back to pricing, so this pricing is included in the duties after a loss. It's part of your policy language, and so they will ask you to determine. Obviously, you generally don't have receipts for most of the items that you lost, and so you're doing for a lot of people you're having to look and see what it would be to replace that item. So those gift registries online or in the store again are very, very useful to you to be able to pull those numbers. Just caution: do not use sales prices. By the time you replace that item, those sales will be long gone. And again, going back to your credit card companies, banks, statements, this at least gives you the pricing of what you had before, what you might have paid for it, but it's not going to be the price to replace. So just be aware of the difference there. Dividing and conquering. Take advantage of those people who offer to help. Ask them to price a page, a room, a list, and create that backup documentation so you have it for your reference. When they're doing a website search or they're building a shopping cart on Target or Walmart, just have them, instead of printing it, print to a PDF, and then they can email that to you. That's one of the other tricks with this is as you're going through your claims, especially if other people are helping you with your contents, it's worth setting up another email that is only for this, just so that your personal email is not drowning in all of these odd things coming in, and you're able to track, and you don't lose track of things. Pre-COVID, people would have pricing parties where they would get together and literally sit around somebody's table and be like, okay, you price the spices, I'll do the cookware, you do the small appliances, and then they were sharing that information. You can do that with other tools if you're able to get together with people. We highly recommend it to be able to share that workload. Again, deep breath. I know it's a lot to talk about, so I'll be quiet for a second. Okay, we're going to talk about the lingo now. So as I mentioned earlier, replacement cost, or RC. You've got actual cash value, ACV, and depreciation, as I mentioned before. It's also sometimes known as holdback. We're going to define these terms. These are the three that most often apply to your contents claim. So replacement cost is the price it would pay to repair or replace the damaged or destroyed item right now with a new item. So to replace the 5 shirts you lost, buy 5 new shirts. Most homeowners policies are replacement cost policies, but not all are, which is why when we were going through the examples of your sample policies, I showed you where to see that it was a replacement cost policy, because you have to check. Because if it's actual cash value, you're not replacing that item there. So actual cash value is the pre-loss value of that item. It's the price that a willing buyer would have paid you, and you as the willing seller would have sold it immediately before the loss. We often refer to it as like that Craigslist price, right? You know, they're willing to buy it, you're willing to sell it, what would it cost? And so, you know, again, you want to know what your policy says so that you know what you're doing, because you don't want to be going and putting extra work into replacement costs if they're not going to give you that. And so actual cash value is also defined by this formula. So the ACV is equal to the replacement cost minus depreciation. And that's a helpful way of visualizing that. And depreciation. So it's the loss in value of an item due to age and condition, so or else wear and tear, right? And so these are other terms that you might see in your policy: holdback, withheld, recoverable depreciation, non-recoverable. And so being aware of that. And here's a visual we put together to kind of lay it out, right? So if you had replacement costs, the costs, you know, on the left, that's the cost to buy that new couch. On the right, you've got your value of that couch an instant before the fire, what you're owed until you repair or replace. And this would be, you know, if you had a replacement cost policy, when you submit that inventory, they're going to pay you for that value of that couch the instant before, the ACV. They're going to subtract the depreciation, and you won't get the cost, the depreciation to make you whole on that until you actually replace that item. Now, and actually, I kind of jumped the gun here. Sorry about that. So your insurance company, like I said, even if you have a replacement cost policy, they're only going to pay you the ACV initially, right? They're going to hold back the depreciation because most of the time in the policies, they have that the settlement loss provisions state that you're owed the actual cash value, which is replacement cost minus depreciation until the property is repaired or replaced. So you actually have to replace the item and send the receipts to the insurer with a demand for the balance they owe you. And then again, that's an extra step that's in here that a lot of people miss. So I wanted to stress that to make sure you understand that. And here's an example of where it is in the policy. And again here. And if the renter's policy, here's the language. You're looking for that replacement cost endorsement on your debts page and attached to your policy. So repeating something we've touched on earlier, is there a time limit to collect your replacement cost benefits? Yes, 36 months. You can ask for extensions. So again, that goes from the date that first payment is made to you for your contents. You have 36 months. So you might submit your inventory at the end of the first year, and you're going to be, as you replace items, you're going to be submitting those receipts to your insurance company, and then they'll be paying you that depreciation that they held back so that you are whole and get your replacement costs. So back on depreciation, I know we spent a lot of time talking about it, and there's a reason why. It's coming up with that cash to replace items can be, it's very hard, especially if they heavily depreciate them. So you want to, you want to stay on top of that. So unless they relax away the requirement, so you generally, they're gonna pay you the amount. As I said, that actual cash value, which is going to be the subtracting the depreciation. And you're not, and so if you're using the funds that they give you to buy replacement items, the less money you have to buy replacement items, the less, the harder it is to get that replacement cost going forward. So you want to make sure that the depreciation that they're applying to you is fair. And bear in mind, depreciation is negotiable. So going back to what I was saying before, the more depreciation your insurer applies, the less you collect up front. There is no official standard on how much they can depreciate your property. So you want to, if something, if you've submitted, my couch, and go back to my example of a couch that's 10 years old but is in like new condition, that was in your living room, and if they depreciated that, down to 20% of its value, I would contest that. It's like new. You should be paying me 80%, right? Just taking that as the example. Versus the couch in the den that the kids and the dogs wallow on, you might take that depreciation down to 20% and say, yeah, that was fair. But when you replace it, you're going to get that other 80% to make the whole. And so again, challenging the numbers if they seem unfair. Be aware of items that should not be depreciated. So those antiques, fine art, jewelry, those things should not be depreciated. If something is listed as an antique on your list and it comes back and it's depreciated, challenge that. That should not have been depreciated, and they need to fix that for you. Because again, you want to be made whole for those items. And then, I don't know that they'll give it to you, but it's always worth asking them to give you a copy of either the depreciation schedule or the method they use, so you understand how they're doing the magic they're working on what you're providing, so that you can understand and respond in kind. All right, and so these are the regulations to just be aware of for depreciation. And so this adjustment should be discernible, measurable, itemized, and specific, and accurately reflect the value of the item. So if you get your list back, you've submitted it, everything is depreciated 50%. That is not discernible, it is not measurable, and it's not specific, and it doesn't reflect the value or the condition of the items you had. And so that depreciation needs to be specific to the items you submitted. And so if you're getting a blanket depreciation for everything, that would be a cause for concern and a challenge. And so again, going back to age and condition. Age is not everything. If they're only looking at the age of an item, they are required by statute to make sure that they're looking at condition, and just make that argument. And you're the only person that knows the condition of the items that were destroyed. So, be accurate in your representation. For the items that you do have photos, you have friends who have photos and can share those, it's worth providing those as backup documentation to substantiate that. But, you can only provide what you've got. And here's the example of the couch with kids and pets. Yes, here we go. Sorry, I kept talking about it, and I actually had the visual in here, so you can see exactly what we're looking at. I will say I have the couch with the kids and pets, and yeah, I would say it's 80% depreciated. My mother-in-law's couch is beautiful. There are no kids or pets on that one, and so yeah, it's in excellent shape. And so again, going back to depreciation, be aware of excessive depreciation. You want to negotiate. We've got the sample guides on our website, and it is a case-by-case basis, reflecting the condition of each item. Now, protecting yourself. So, and this is difficult for people because you're looking at the fact that you don't have most of the documentation or proof for what you have. So the biggest takeaway is never intentionally claim items you did not have. You don't need to pad your claim in order to get a fair settlement. If you feel that your adjuster is lowballing the pricing, you don't need to go high. You need to be very accurately representing what you had to the best of your knowledge. Innocent mistakes are common. They don't amount to insurance fraud, but intentional misrepresentation is a felony. And so please, please don't feel like you need to counteract what you feel is them not acting in good faith by actions on your own. You want to always represent yourself as being above board here. And if, because if they feel you are padding, inflating your claim, they will delay this. I had a client from the CZU fire in 2020 in Santa Cruz, who was asked to make a statement, under oath about their contents because they didn't believe that she had those items in her home. Luckily, she happened to have a a family member who had done a video of a holiday party and she could prove it, but they were balking at the pricing she provided for the items she had in the list. And you know, a lot of it's just, you know, the adjusters feel, you know, it's their feeling. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you're being as honest with this and as above board with this as possible. Being organized, like I said earlier, save all your receipts, you know, scan, photocopy, email. Do not give your insurance company your only copy of anything. Make sure you always have a copy for your records. You want to document and track all of your communications about your contents claim, okay? You want to track your payments. We have a Woolsey fire survivor who's a CPA, created an accounting spreadsheet. That's actually where it is on our website. And it's not only your contents claims payments. You can track any payments in any of the coverages. So your dwelling, your other structures, all of those things. One of the strategies that survivors often use is opening a separate bank account when replacing items so that they can keep track of what's there and they're not mingling the money, so that they always know to the penny where they are and how much left they have to claim. So either doing the tracking or putting it in a bank account so that you can track. Be strategic. You're unlikely to replace everything you lost. It's a hassle to keep doing this. So start by maximizing those actual cash value payments so by arguing for lower depreciation, especially on your big ticket items, and identifying that true replacement cost. Starting your inventory at the large items, to start with your big items, you know, your spices in your kitchen, things like that. Well, you might have had 50 items in your spice cabinet, and it's going to add up to several $100s. You know, you're better off focusing on those big items that are going to get you tens of thousands of dollars quickly. And be aware, you know, some people work on their contents list for a year or two. That's okay. You know, your insurance claim has lots of moving parts. You want to prioritize and take your time. You know, you've got your temporary housing situation settled. You got to work on your dwelling. You know, your contents is just one of many pieces, and don't pour all your energy into that when you have these other pieces going, because the timeline is the same, right? You know, you've got 3 years with a federally declared disaster in the state of California. You know, so being aware of your clock moving forward here, and giving everything the attention it needs in a way that you can manage getting yourself there. Robert, your question about the out-of-pocket. So those, yes. So your out-of-pocket living expenses from the time of the fire to the present, yes. You save the receipts. I would submit them if they have not responded they should at least respond that they've received them and they're moving them forward, because they owe you an answer on that. Elise, if you can make sure the response has for Robert that webinar and his California legal rights that lists the timeline, that would be great. And Robert, the other, if they haven't, I mean, at this point, it's a little late for them not to have handled your temporary living expenses and things that you incurred immediately after the fire. So you have the option, and I was going to talk about it a little bit later, to file a request for assistance with the California Department of Insurance. And sometimes just that simple step will get the insurance company moving forward on issues that they haven't done. And I'll share that information near the end, okay? And going back again to our guidance, being politely assertive, and this is our premise for everything. They cash your premium checks in return for promising you three things: peace of mind, that they were going to reimburse you if you had a loss, and they were going to provide prompt claim service, which Robert is not getting right now. So your contract with your insurer, that legal document that is your policy, entitles you to all three of these things. And your rights to this under the contract are protected by the state law. So you want to track it, but you want to be assertive on what's being agreed to, what's being worked out, but you don't want to just let them go. It's calling them out. It's key. Going back to that documenting and keeping the claim stock, diary, and when you when they call you versus sending you an email or a letter, you're following up with that email or that letter saying, hey, thank you for the call today. I understand this, because you want to keep them on point for what they have agreed to do, what they still owe you, what's working on, when they are sliding on responding to timelines and deadlines, and just the courtesy of a response. So let's see. All right. And so here's the best takeaway that we've got, right? You have to do what's best for you and your family. Nobody but you can assess your tolerance for this process. I've got a friend who lost his home in 2003. He's still documenting everything he lost for his contents, and he sends it to his insurance company. They're not paying him anymore. He's just trying to prove a point that, it takes forever to figure out everything he lost, right? I had another friend who just, it was too painful. She could not focus on that piece. And so she ended up she stopped at a certain point and said, this is all I can do, and this is enough money for us. Now, I say that with the caveat that if you are underinsured for your dwelling, you will probably want to focus on maximizing your contents claim so that you do have more dollars that from your total insurance claim that you're going to apply to your rebuild. But you figure out what your tolerance is. So you have to choose the best path for you, your family, and your finances. And again, leveraging other people to help you as much as you can. Staying connected to other survivors, just a heads up, not this month, because we just had Survivor yesterday, and we won't be doing one the third Tuesday of December, but in January we'll be doing these on the first and third Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. It's a great way to connect to other survivors. It's hosted by what we call Team Up, our previous catastrophic loss survivors who want to share their lessons learned, and they serve as mentors and just kind of walk you through the process. So those will be going on. We've got our Survivor Speak publications that are a good resource for you. Like I said, we've got the yellow book, which is like bite-sized pieces that you can pick up, take away. The website, it's got incredible information. It's a lot, so don't get overwhelmed. Don't run down through all the rabbit holes and feel like you've got too much on your plate. Again, manage that so you've got bite-sized pieces. These are some of the webinars that we've mentioned. Robert, that insurance claim rules and your legal rights, I think is very key for you to go back if they're not responding to those temporary expenses that you incurred after the fire and have not reimbursed you for that. You want to push them on that. Upcoming events are scheduled. This is what we've got currently. Obviously, we had 2 events going on today, one for the 2020 California wildfire survivors, this workshop for the 2021s. We have in January, February, and March, we'll be having, it's a financial planning clinic. It's basically financial decision making. So if you know how much insurance you have, what that rebuild is going to look like, it's a way for you to sit down with a certified financial planner for an hour. They're doing pro bono work with us. It's a partnership we have with their national association. And they'll help you figure out how to make the best financial decision you can with what resources you have available and not jeopardize your long-term financial future. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at making this financial decision of do I buy, rebuild, what do I do? This is a great resource for you. You just go to our website at events, uphelp.org/events, and register for whichever of those dates works for you. It's a Google interest form, and then we will get you into those plans. We'll be doing a legal clinic in the first 3 months of the new year as well. So if you feel like your insurance company you're having issues with that and you think you might have a legal issue, it's a great resource for you. And then our workshops for January and on will be published by the beginning of next week. They're just not on our website yet, so sorry about that. And stay informed. If you haven't signed up, please sign up there. You know, we will put the PowerPoint recording and the PDF of it on the website at events under Today Were You Registered, but you can also email to have a copy sent to you. Going back to the Department of Insurance, so as I mentioned earlier, you have the ability to ask them for a request for assistance. You can call their number. You can go online and fill out the form. You can print it and fill it out by hand and mail it in. They'll do it any of those ways. But it's a great resource for you to get the department looking at your entire claim history and what's going on, and hopefully prod your insurer to pick up the pace of your recovery and response. Again, just to call back, this is your library for your disaster. It's got a lot of sample letters, forms, those survivor speak tips. All of this information's there, so please check out the website. And just wanted to call out a thank you to our funders, RCRC and Golden State Authority, Finance Authority, who enable us to be here with you today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Elise, do we have, I think we've gotten all of our questions. So I want to give all of you here an opportunity. If you've got any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. All right, I'll give you a minute in case you're typing and I can't see it. All right, well, Elise, if you'll quit recording, I think you're good.